From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Let's see, what do we got today? Well, I need to talk about what I'm not hearing as much as I should be right now, especially regarding the LA protests and the regime's response. Yeah, there's some things that are not being said. You know, that's kind of my credo around here. If I feel it needs to be said and it's not being said, I try to say it. That's my little motto. And there are definitely some aspects of this story that I feel are not getting the attention, and some angles that are being ignored or just lost. So I'm just going to do my little part here to try to put some of this into context. First, very quickly, a correction from last Thursday's show. I said Office of Management and Budget when I meant to say Congressional Budget Office, the OMB versus the CBO. They're two very different entities. The Congressional Budget Office scores legislation to determine how much it will cost. That was the story, of course, the very big, very bad bill estimated to add $2.5 trillion to the debt, according to the CBO. Other estimates put it more accurately at $5 trillion, but that's another story. And as I was talking about it, I kept referring to the CBO as the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which is the agency headed by Russ Vought, maybe the worst person in all of government right now. He's the author, one of the main authors of Project 2025. He is the head honcho over at OMB. He's all about white nationalism. He's all about the unitary executive, giving all power to the president. He's a very, very bad guy. And the problem is, in a regime filled with clowns and incompetence, Russ Vought is very competent, very smart, and a very, very bad man. So, anyway, yeah, I said OMB not once or twice, but several times, I think, when, of course, I should have been saying CBO. One more correction, I said Wake University when talking about Scott Pelley, the CBS veteran journalist, who said some very good and honest things at a recent commencement address he gave about the regime and the danger we find ourselves in. So Scott Pelley, good for him. I was complimenting him, but I said Wake University instead of Wake Forest University. And it's a small mistake, but just because I'm a vain person, I was embarrassed by it when I listened back and heard myself say Wake University. So that correction. And in kind of a follow-up and related to the Scott Pelley story, Terry Moran, the journalist from ABC News, who recently interviewed the Orange Menace, remember that was the one where he asked him about the Declaration of Independence, and the Orange Menace didn't know what the Declaration of Independence was? Yeah, Terry Moran did a good job in that interview. Anyway, yeah, Terry Moran fired because he was honest in a tweet. He called the Orange Menace and Stephen Miller world-class haters. So it's somewhat related to the Scott Pelley story, only because they're journalists and telling the truth. One got fired. The other was a little more careful in his language. But it's a follow-up because we were just talking last week, you and I, or just on Monday, as a matter of fact, I think, about how every journalist needs to start telling the truth right to the camera, and especially right in the face of the Orange Menace. They need to tell him the truth right to his face. So Terry Moran got fired. He'll be all right. He'll land on his feet. He'll get a podcast or something. He'll do fine. All right, here's what we are going to talk about today. The LA story. As I continue to remind you on a episode-by-episode basis here, it's all one story. It's not a bunch of different stories. It's all one story. It's all about the fascist takeover. That's all it is. So this LA story, just fold that into the big one. It's the fascist takeover. As it regards the protests themselves, as it regards the activities of ICE. You can even fold in the very big, very bad bill, because millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are earmarked for these ICE raids. It's all part of the authoritarianism. So let's talk about this story and put it into context. Oh, one more very quick side note. I'm sick of people using the word illegal when talking about people. When they use illegal as a noun, well, the illegals. No. That is a huge red flag. You hear anybody call a person an illegal, that person right there is a flat-out racist. A crude, ignorant, bumpkin, flat-out racist. Anybody who uses illegal in that context. So I tell you what, I'm going to start using the word illegal as a noun. I say the Orange Menace is an illegal. He's a convicted felon. He breaks federal law on a daily basis. Everyone who supports him knows he's a convicted felon, knows he breaks the law on the daily. So let's call them illegals too. Oh, and how about everyone who is pardoned by the regime for their criminal activity as well? We'll call them illegals. So yeah, I'm going to call the Orange Menace an illegal, and everyone pardoned by him, everyone in the regime, I'm going to call them illegals from here on out. I'm going to make that part of my lexicon. He's the illegal in chief. All right, listen. 99% of us agree, of course, that violent agitators that infiltrate protests should be stopped. Nobody disagrees with that. Everybody, okay, let's just concede. Everybody agrees. Equating protesters with the violence is a political lie. Everybody knows it, including the liars. Also, the job of police is to protect the public, if I need to remind anyone of that, including the police themselves. What's the job of police? To protect the public. Oh, Charles Purcell, you sound so naive. Well, okay, I'm not naive. I understand that the job of the police, in fact, is to protect the property and interests of the ruling elite. I know that. But the pledge they take to the Constitution, to the people they serve, is that they're there to protect and serve the people of their city, the people of their state. That means they're there to protect the protesters engaged in lawful activity. Protesting is a lawful activity. In fact, it's a treasured American tradition. The police themselves seem to have completely lost sight of the fact that their job is to protect and serve the public. Civil disobedience. Let's talk about that for a minute. That's where you do get arrested. Again, everybody knows it. The people engaging in the civil disobedience, the cops, everybody agrees. There's so many areas here where everyone's in agreement. We all should be on the same page. What is civil disobedience? Well, it's blocking streets. It's against the law to block a street. If you do it, you're engaging in civil disobedience. Civil disobedience means you're breaking a law. Everybody knows it. You know it. The cops know it. Refusing an order to disassemble. When the cops say this is an unlawful assembly, well, first of all, I think they usually say it way too quickly. They say it without merit, without the jurisdiction. That's another story, though. The fact is they've said it. So as of this moment, refusing to disperse is now a crime. Blocking the entrance to buildings. Occupying a building. Blocking vehicles, like they did with the ICE windowless, unmarked vans. These are all acts of civil disobedience. And when people engage in that, they know they're going to be arrested. When people engage in civil disobedience, they have a duty to remain peaceful. Their duty is not only as a citizen to the larger society to keep the peace, but their duty is to their cause, because violence never helped any cause. So I just want to get our terms straight here. Civil disobedience, blocking streets, blocking vehicles, occupying buildings, refusing to disperse. These are legitimate acts of civil disobedience. Stand peacefully, get arrested. But here's the thing. The cops also have a duty to remain peaceful under these circumstances. When the cops use violence to break up peaceful protests, they are violating their duty. And not only that, they are escalating the situation. They're initiating the violence. I've seen this many times firsthand in protests. I've seen the police make the first strike many, many times. Have I seen agitators throw water bottles? Sometimes much worse, sometimes rocks. We've seen some cinder blocks tossed in the video from LA. Sure, yes, that happens. As I opened with, arrest them. Nobody disagrees with you. The protesters want you to arrest them. The peaceful protesters who you are there to protect want you to arrest the brick thrower. We're all together on this. But I've seen numerous incidents, both personally out there and, of course, in the news coverage, where the cops are the ones escalating. They're the ones initiating violence. They're attacking protesters. And it's only human nature to resist or to lash out physically when you're being attacked. By the way, this is where we hear the terms clash or skirmish from the press. Please hear that as another huge red flag. That's a news media being either lazy or dishonest or both. I don't know which. No, these aren't clashes. These aren't skirmishes. That suggests a sort of neutrality, a both sidism that is not there. No, we've seen it over and over and over again. Cops attacking, striking, tackling innocent protesters. Imagine the discipline it takes to remain nonviolent when you're being attacked. I mean, that was the whole debate between Martin Luther King and Malcolm back in the day, with MLK just insisting on this Gandhian model of nonviolent resistance. This is the debate we had after George Floyd, when some members of the Antifa philosophy said, no, I'm not going to just sit there and get pummeled. I'm going to fight back. And many in the movement said, no, you can't do that. You have to remain peaceful. It's a debate that continues to this day. I'm on the side of Martin Luther King. I'm on the side of Gandhi, personally. But I also understand that it's damn near impossible. It's really difficult, at least, to live that model, to be Gandhi. This is why training is so vitally important. That's why organizing is so vitally important. I keep stressing that. I keep encouraging people. Get with your people. Get organized. Do the training. Now, this brings me to something else. Part of that training, part of that organizing, is being clear about a message. And we, the people who are in the streets, have to stay in control. We have to keep ownership of that message. We can't hand it over to people like Gavin Newsom. Let's talk about Gavin Newsom for a minute. Or for that matter, any other establishment Democrat, corporate Democrats especially if they're running for president. So let's talk about Newsom for a minute. Okay, it's complicated. He and the other high-profile Democrats are really trying to de-emphasize the actual story, the ICE story, because they know that immigration still favors the Orange Menace in the polls. People in polling still favor the Orange Menace over Democrats when it comes to the issue of immigration. So in this current news cycle and political cycle, Newsom is de-emphasizing the actual ICE raids that started all of this. And he's talking more about the Orange Menace and the regime and democracy and blah, blah, blah. Not that he's wrong. He's not wrong. So the Orange Menace knows that the immigration issue favors him with the voters. He knows it. He also loves the whole law and order fight. And by the way, when I say the Orange Menace, I mean the regime generally. He's not smart enough to really know anything, but he knows how to hate, as Terry Moran pointed out. And he's got very smart people like Stephen Miller and Russ Vought actually turning all this stuff into policy and into political strategery. And the one thing I'll give the Orange Menace credit for, he knows how to be a con artist. He has genuine skills as a P.T. Barnum. I'll give him that's the only thing I'll give him. Other than that, he's just a buffoon and an idiot. So he and the regime, especially Miller and Vought and those types, they know this. They love the fight. It's just like the 2024 campaign, us versus them. Oh, the Democrats fight for them, the colored people, the trans people. We fight for you. Wink, wink, don't say it out loud, white, straight people. So Newsom and the corporate Democrats play into this. They know that the immigration issue doesn't poll well for them. So, okay, let's go with the democracy thing. Let's go with the authoritarian angle. Again, not that they're wrong. They're not wrong. They're right. But the point I'm making is they are fashioning the debate, the argument, the moment for their purposes. And we, the people, meaning the protesters, must not surrender that. Because right now, because they've captured the debate, the ICE raids themselves have lost the spotlight. There was a huge raid in Omaha, Nebraska, where they just barged in to a meat processing plant, took out dozens of people. God knows where they are now. And it got almost zero national coverage. It got mostly just local news coverage. So this continues. The ICE raids continue. There have been reports of widespread raids in Ventura County going after agricultural workers in California. So the very issue that brought protesters out to the streets is actually losing focus. We, the protesters, become pawns in the fight for power between the wannabe dictator and the elite corporate Democrats. And once again, I've said now a couple times, it's not that Newsom's wrong. He's not wrong. Newsom points out, as I have, we all know the regime wants this, what we were just talking about, setting up for the Insurrection Act, for martial law. This is all true. But he's running for president, so he says what serves him. We have to be our own leaders, not surrender our message. Don't become pawns. Keep our eyes on the prize. I was very happy to see last night, Tuesday, I'm recording this on Wednesday, last night every city showed out, including right here in Milwaukee. Very proud of my people. Over 1,000 people making lots of noise. Excellent. Of course, we got the big day coming up on Saturday. Hope everybody's making their plans. There were a few incidents, as the media calls them, clashes or skirmishes in these different cities. If I have to say it 1,000 times, I will. Peaceful protesters don't do it. A handful of self-serving agitators and the cops themselves. That's where the violence comes from. These are not clashes or skirmishes. Stop calling it that. I mean, how many times do we have to see the same old movie? Peaceful, constitutionally protected protests spoiled by agitators. Go ahead, arrest them. Like I said, we'll help you. We want them out of the picture. Another plot point to this dumb movie is what they did in Portland. Same thing. When the Orange Menace says, the illegal in chief says, oh, the whole city would have been obliterated. The whole city would have been on fire if I hadn't stepped in. Of course, it's, the entire protest in LA was limited to that one detention center and maybe 2 or 3 intersections out of this entire sprawling city. Demonstrators blocked the 101 freeway a couple times. Yeah, in Portland, it was basically one intersection of one block, and it was portrayed as the whole city was under siege. How many times are people going to fall for this idiocy? The same car burning over and over and over again in these shots. Yeah, I said on the first day, there's no denying that there's some rock throwing, there's some vandalism, there's some graffiti, cars set on fire, trash cans set on fire, of course. But it's the same handful that they keep showing over and over again. And it's 0.0001% of the protesters. In fact, it's 0% of the protesters. It's a-hole agitators. But of course, the cameras go running, and it completely distorts the picture. The national media is 100% complicit. Why? Because it sells. Because they're for profit. Why am I always railing about profit and money? Profit and money create the lies you see on the news. Because one picture sells, and the other picture just doesn't sell. The other picture that's telling the truth, hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of people engaged in legal assembly in the most cherished, time-honored tradition of protest, often in song, in dance, having picnics. No, those pictures don't sell. They don't make money, so you don't see them. Why do I keep harping over and over again about money and profit? It ruins everything, including our ability to understand reality. Jesus. And once again, the illegal in chief knows this, knows how to exploit it. And here's where I'm going to agree with Gavin Newsom. The illegal in chief knows that the National Guard will only get in the way, will only inflame things, escalate things. He knows they're not needed for any kind of safety or law enforcement. He knows that. At least his people do. Again, he's pretty dumb. He's really, really dumb. He's really stupid. But Russ Vought and Stephen Miller certainly know. And Gavin Newsom knows, rightly, that this is a setup. It's laying the groundwork for authoritarianism, for the Insurrection Act, declaring martial law, laying the cornerstone of his fascist authoritarian plans. And let's put a fine point on this as well. As we've been dancing around here, there are different forms of dissent. Please know and understand the difference between nonviolent civil disobedience and polite, contained marches and rallies. They're both fine. I got nothing against a big old rally. I think showing just the sheer numbers of people on the street in solidarity, chanting, singing, holding signs, I think that's great. Fine, yes, I want more and more and more of that. Good. But please don't confuse that with what was happening on Friday in Los Angeles when people in the community came out into the streets in direct action to block the activity of these ICE raids, to stop them, to put their bodies literally in front of these unmarked windowless vans. Non-violent civil disobedience, direct action, is very different from a friendly, happy march or rally. They're both good. They're not the same thing. And we need more direct action. I am so proud, and I just have endless praise for the people who put their bodies out there to try to block these ICE raids, these illegal, unconstitutional attacks on innocent people. When you're on the street and the cops tell you to disperse and you refuse, you are now engaging in civil disobedience, and you better understand that, and you better be ready. Now, a couple things I've noticed. When the cops start marching forward into the people, I'm not quite sure why people let that happen. Now, I'm not an expert. I've been around quite a while. And I know one of the techniques, instead of walking backwards, instead of allowing yourself to be forced out of the area, and this is where training and organizing come in, there should be an instant signal. You know, like when elementary school teachers have some sort of word or gesture cue and all the kids get it right away? That's what we need. We need everybody on the same page. When the cops get in their big old line and start marching you backwards, everybody needs to sit down, lay down, go limp. Even better, do it and be silent. Silence is so powerful in a moment like this. Then you're forcing the cops to arrest you. And not only that, remaining limp is not resisting arrest. You're not resisting. Don't resist. Just lay there. Make them go through one by one and literally carry thousands of people out. This is so effective. The cameras are going to love you. But instead, what I'm seeing is protesters backpedaling, continuing to sort of harass and yell at the cops, almost begging them to come out, which they always do. One or two cops will come out and strike or tackle somebody, creating a quote-unquote skirmish. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing where is your training? Where is your organization? I can't stress enough how important that is. All right. A couple of other quick thoughts before we go. The very big, very bad bill has hundreds of millions of dollars of funding for this horrible mass deportation agenda, which, by the way, is failing miserably, which is exactly why Stephen Miller and the illegal in chief insisted that ICE start going into Home Depot parking lots and into places of business because their numbers are so low. Every president before him, Obama, Biden, deported more undocumented immigrants than the Orange Menace. Because he's such an idiot, because they're so incompetent. If he just did it legally. Ugh. So anyway, yeah, the very big, very bad bill funds this nonsense. Not to mention that it cements authoritarian rule. It codifies all of the worst aspects of Project 2025 and the unitary executive. DC Republicans are falling in line with the illegal in chief, of course. As I've said for many, many years, and it's only been proven time and time again, the Republican Party, the GOP, is illegitimate. It's an illegitimate political party. It's not a political party. It's basically, at this point, a terror organization. And where are the Democrats? Well, of course, we have no opposition party. I've said several times, Gavin Newsom ain't wrong, but he's also not the solution. There's been very little or zero effective pushback from the Democrats. So Maxine Waters was on the scene. Good for her. The usual suspects, Bernie, Booker, Chris Murphy of Connecticut, making statements. But by and large, the national Democrats, certainly the leadership, just nowhere to be seen. And if they are outspoken, then I go back to the whole rant I had about Gavin Newsom. They're being kind of careful and political about it. And let's end it there with my reminder. Let's all keep our eyes on the prize and remember that we are the leaders and we are the creators of our own fate. And we have to embrace that role and keep it and never surrender and never be made pawns in their games. So let's leave it at that today. I have a lot more to say about the Democrats, but we'll save that for another time. Okay. Boycotts and events, you know the big one. It's this Saturday, the 14th. Everybody, please. Every single person, put your body on the street. If you're just engaging in a big old rally, have your camaraderie, have a lot of fun, carry your sign, sing your song, chant your chants. It's fantastic just to put your body out there. Numbers matter. If you're engaging in civil disobedience, if it's more of a confrontational event that you're attending, if there is a heavy police force, if they're asking you to leave, whatever the deal is, get organized, know what you're doing, act on your training, you know the drill. No particular boycotts. I think we're in the middle of a McDonald's boycott, but that should be permanent. That should be a lifelong boycott. What are you doing? Make all corporate boycotts permanent, please. Okay, so see you out there on Saturday, No King's Day. As always, this episode can be heard on your favorite podcast platform or on the website, charlesburcell.com. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio. Follow me on Substack and Blue Sky. Peter Donalds wrote and performed the theme song. All right, there it is. I love you. See you out there.